This is Martin Giles at Guildford Dragon News, and today I'm with three successful candidates from Thursday's County Council election. I have Bob Hughes from the Conservative Party, who won in Sheer, narrowly, but did. Fiona Davidson, a new councillor who won in Guildford South East, and George Potter, a Lib Dem, who was already a borough councillor and is now also a county councillor, having won Guildford East. Welcome to you all, welcome to the Guildford Dragon, and thank you for taking part in this debate.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, so the subject of this debate, I'd like to discuss the results and what they mean, and get your ideas about some of the subjects that will doubtless come up for debate in the County Council during your term of 4 years. So first of all, before we actually get onto those subjects, I'd like to talk about the popular vote and how it was reflected in the results. And I will be posting a pie chart I'm referring to with the article so people can see it. But I'll just give you each your party share. So the Conservatives in the 10 Guildford divisions got almost 38%. The Lib Dems 27%, and the R4GV got 19.5%, and the rest of with 10% for Labour, 4 for the GGG, 2 for the Green Party, and 0.3 for the Peace Party. Now, George, I'm going to start with you because the Lib Dems have a position on proportional representation. What would you think would happen if we did switch to a position of proportional representation for this county council election?
Well, say first of all, I think the results of this election show the tyranny of first past the post, and of course sometimes it works for you and sometimes it works against you. And I think in this case, we Lib Dems are quite lucky that our vote was distributed in exactly the right places to sort of maximise representation. I feel GGGR have probably by more the luck of a draw have ended up with pretty much proportional representation, and the Conservatives are of course underrepresented, while meanwhile Labour, GGG and the Greens have no representation whatsoever. Now, we of course support proportional representation at all levels, local government and national, as Liberal Democrats. But what would happen in Guildford under it? I suspect you would see the Liberal Democrats generally in the town managed to make, I think our core vote is probably now just over about a third of people. There's probably about just slightly more than a third of solid Conservatives, probably another third scattered whose natural inclinations perhaps another third which are scattered all over the place, including a good chunk of people who might be naturally more inclined towards Labour or the Greens, but who this time probably voted tactically either Liberal Democrat or R4GV. So I suspect we would see a more diverse split and a greater breadth of parties represented on the council under proportional representation.
Okay, but it has, you will admit that first past the post has, I think you said, it's worked for you this time, and in fact
it has worked for us in Guildford Borough. It has not worked well for us at the county council as a whole, because we are still, of course, underrepresented compared to where we should be given the proportion of votes we received.
Yeah, and of course that's presumably how it would work at county level rather than within the within the subgroups of the divisions. But Bob, your party, looking at this pie chart, is underrepresented in the Guildford 10 divisions. You would agree?
Yes, absolutely.
But presumably, are you still a fan of first past the post?
Yes, absolutely. I think it produces a council that's able to do things, or a government that's able to do things. I know it is alleged that it would bring in the different strengths of other groups. I don't think the evidence of coalitions is as good as people make out.
I mean, of course, famously, all countries like Germany and Scandinavian countries are all famously complete economic basket cases with a constant instability in their governments, thanks to proportional representation.
Right, and Fiona, you are working in partnership with the Lib Dems at the Borough Council. Now, you haven't had direct involvement in that, but no doubt you've been speaking to your colleagues who have. And what's their experience? Is it working well?
I think their experience is that it's working well. I think that when it comes to at a local level, I think that lots and lots and lots of voters want collaboration in pursuit of things that are important to local residents. So actually, when we speak to residents, they're very positive about our collaboration with the Liberal Democrats. Now, you know, if we were in a different town, maybe things would be different. But there are a lot of things that we need to fix in Guildford. And I think that that perspective of collaboration means that we're actually working on behalf of a lot of the electorate in Guildford. And it's certainly a stance that residents are very positive about, and our councillors are positive about it as well. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's absolutely perfect, but for now, it seems to be working to the benefit of both the groups and residents.
I mean, of course, that's a view, but on the other hand, is it the reason why so little of what was promised has been delivered?
I'm not sure that I'd agree so little of what was promised. I think we've only been on the Borough Council for 2 years. So
Yeah, 2 years.
I think in those 2 years, we've made tremendous strides in terms of openness and transparency, in terms of the town centre master plan, in terms of looking at renovating the infrastructure of the town, the ash hotspots, the ash road bridge. I think actually by comparison with how the town was stuck in aspect before, I think we've made a huge difference in a very, very short space of time.
Okay, and if I could just step in there for a minute, Bob, you say that you can get things done, but some of the things done under the last administration here in Guildford weren't very popular, were they? And you're still paying the price for that.
Oh, I undoubtedly, the borough plan has hit us very badly.
And isn't that one of the disadvantages of first past the post, that a single party can drive through things in the face of significant opposition, not least from the electorate?
Well, you know, I don't want to get controversial in this, but I mean, when you look at Mole Valley, where the Liberal Democrats tried to pretend it was a Conservative borough plan, and they sort of abandoned it. So I don't think that actually this issue has got anything to do with that.
If I may interject on this one, I think the argument that that strong majorities leads to better government is quite facile. For example, that one only needs to look at, for one hand, at the county council where we've had 24 years of a Conservative majority. Now going to have another 4 years of Conservative majority, and the result has been what? Potholes in the roads, mismanaged contracts, key services which were failing or underperforming for years, and of course the spectacular financial acumen of borrowing £450 million to invest to make money and managing to lose 10% of the value of your investment. So I'm not sure that if I were the Conservatives, I would be saying that majority rule is a fantastic success, which is guaranteed to always achieve more than different parties working together in the public interest.
Okay,
George, you showed me some investments that haven't lost money.
One more thing to you that Fiona raised, and that is the cooperation, because that, you know, time after time, when voters are asked, they do like their politicians to cooperate. And in previous debates we've had, I mean, I'm sure I could introduce a whole list of things on which the three of you would agree. You know, we all want more tidiness, we want less litter, we want less violence, we want, you know, it's easy, we want more housing and all those kind of things. We want better social care for adults and for children. But when we get into the systems we have, it seems to encourage controversy and animosity. Don't you think so?
I think it's overplayed. Certainly in my life in politics, most of the things that I think have been achieved by administrations I've been in have been through a large-scale cooperation. So I'm on the side of everybody else with that. I just don't think the electoral system is the way to necessarily achieve it.
Okay. All right. Well, we've had a go at that, and now I would like to move on to that major item, or two items really, adult and child social care, because although it's something I think too little debated in the county council election debates, they are by far the biggest budget items in the county council budget, and I'm just looking now at the budget for last year, 20 to 21, and the adult social care amount was 370 million, and the children's social care 150, and that's out of a total budget of just under £1 billion. So you know, we're talking about the majority of the council budget going on those two items. Now, what Bob, because your party is the incumbent party, you haven't had a good track record on these subjects. What's your party intending to do to put things right and also to improve things in those areas?
I think if you look at the indices by which these things are measured, I think actually in terms of adult social care, we do have a very good track record. I think the work that's going on now, the specialist housing that is being built, I think it's the first 3 are underway, and more housing is being provided. I think actually they are policies that nobody could object to. I think they are good at what they do. I think the director they brought in some years ago has transformed what's going on. And that's an area I'm very proud of. There's been huge problems in children. It's a tragedy that the director they brought in died last summer. And he is a man with a national reputation. And the new director's come in, and I hope she will succeed. But the loss of Dave Hill set that back in an enormous way. And I wouldn't pretend there weren't problems, but I think those problems are well underway to being cured. And that's what Ofsted say. That's okay. What they say.
Well, with respect, Bob, you don't know what Ofsted say. None of us do, because they haven't published their report yet. And
they published several reports. They published a number of reports,
but not
their most recent report has not been published.
Yeah, they were only in a couple of months ago.
And yes, and that report hasn't been published. Their previous one,
no, it was.
It is delayed until after the election.
Yeah.
So it was late. The publication was delayed until after the election. So let's read it and see what it says.
Of course,
I hope it's as rosy as you say. Certainly,
no,
the last report,
I didn't say that was rosy. I was saying that it's progress.
Certainly, the last report said yes, there had been some progress, but there are still many areas which were seriously underperforming. So I'm hoping it's improved. But generally speaking, I'd say on adult social care, it is a great improvement to see the council is building these facilities again. It's sort of a back to the future, given that of course is only about a decade ago that the council was selling off its own council-owned care homes. But you know, I'm pleased to see that. But I think Bob was quite right. Nobody could disagree with the approach now being pursued on that front. And in fairness to the county council, and indeed to all county councils, the government since 2015, the government has consistently failed to come up with what we need in this country: a proper long-term settlement and solution for funding of social care, not leaving it to be left underfunded through incremental council tax rises every single year. And that's a problem which nobody can solve. I think, however, the problem with both of them is that the way in which we have transformed them at the county level has been by redefining eligibility, not by cutting services, but by redefining eligibility, changing how they're delivered. The result being that there are many people who used to get help and who still need help, but no longer get it. And with children's services, I think, whilst I imagine the new family centres, as we must call them, are well run and well staffed and do a lot, 1.5 family centres per borough is no substitute for the 38 children's centres in deprived communities, including in my own division, or partly serving my own division, and indeed serving Fiona's division, the one in Bushy Hill, which was closed a couple of years ago. And I'm sorry, but when people have to take a hour bus ride with a child to access a centre and to access services, it is not the same as the support you got when it was just down the road from you. And I think
okay,
yes, the services that are done are being improved, but I think the overall headline picture masks a lot of people falling through the cracks behind the scenes.
Okay, now Fiona, we haven't given you a chance yet to speak on this. If you had a magic wand and you could change 2 things in these areas, what would they be?
I would change the amount. I would change the amount of money being spent on children's services if I had a magic wand.
What
I think
you mean, the money coming in from central government?
Yes, I think children's services has been underfunded for a long time. You know, it is absolutely critical that children have a good start in life. And I think that the history of Surrey County Council, and I acknowledge that things seem to be improving now, but they had an appalling history for at least a decade and nobody took it in hand. That is truly shocking. It's good that with the appointment of Dave Hill, and it is very sad that he died, very sad for everyone, including the children of Surrey. But there was a decade of complete abandonment of children's services, and it's really, really not acceptable for that to happen.
But did this?
I also think that children's mental services are going to need a lot more investment following the COVID pandemic. Okay. So actually, I think that children's services need to get much, much more attention from all councillors on Surrey County Council than they've been given over the last decade. We should not have been in the position where we had 2 Ofsted reports actually, producing a failed result for Surrey Children's Services. But I admit...
Let me just break in there, though. Did this subject come up on the doorstep when you were campaigning?
Do you know, I would say that it came up once or twice, and it surprises me as well. But, I genuinely think that lots of people don't realise that adult social care and children's social care is a county council responsibility. And actually, that's something that we probably need to advertise a little bit more.
So is it councillors who are fault? Is it us in the media? I mean, we publish stories about it.
I think it's everyone, and we need people to understand just how critical a part the county council plays in the creation of values in society with adult social care and children's care. Adult social care is also an area that actually needs a lot more attention, and I do think that there are many, many other things that can be done.
Okay, forgive me. I know that this is a big subject. They all are, and we could go on, but time's against us. I want to move on now to roads, which is something that often people, I believe, do bring up on the doorstep. And I know that traditionally potholes is a big issue. I'm wondering if it was this time round. And I'd also like to hear from all of you what you will do about potholes. And what your ideas would be to reduce congestion and improve air quality across Guildford and the rest of the county. And I'm going to start with you, George.
Okay, so in succession, potholes and roads. All of us as county councillors can make a difference in terms of lobbying to get problems dealt with at the local level. Local issues we can get dealt with, bring them to the attention of highways, get them moved up the list, and what have you. So all of us probably have a backlog to deal with in our areas. But when it comes to road maintenance and potholes as a whole, the fundamental problem is that the way in which the contracts for the maintenance and repairs have been written, and the way in which they are monitored, and the way in which they are enforced, leaves a lot to be desired, with the result that you get repairs which do not last, you get the wrong type of repairs, you get repairs of a little piece of a road, while the rest of the road is left untouched. So the machinery has to go away and come back multiple times. It is grossly inefficient, and also, in fairness, I will say the other part of the problem is we have very highly trafficked roads in Surrey, but we get the same amount of money per head as any other county. So more traffic, but no more funding, but less funding per car, basically, means our roads are always going to be playing catch up. But that is what I would change for contract management. When it comes to air quality and traffic and all the rest of it, it really is urgent. Air pollution might be invisible, but it is shaving years of people's lives. It is already high in Guildford, in many parts of the borough, and across Surrey as a whole. How do you fix it? We have to make it so that the alternatives to using cars are more viable, more practical, and more attractive than using cars. Not by punishing motorists, but by improving the alternatives, whether that be buses, whether that be cycling, whether that be walking. And by making our roads safer for pedestrians and for cyclists and for children. That is how we can go about reducing traffic and getting people out of their cars into more efficient mode of transport, where you get more people on the same amount of tarmac for other modes of transport. And in the process, we can also tackle air quality.
Okay, thank you, George. Bob, is the carrot enough, or does there need to be more of a stick if we're going to get true modal shift that everyone says they desire?
Well, can I just say on potholes, I don't agree with George at all. I mean, a huge amount, another 77 million, I think it was put into this. And it is a problem, but to be fair, partly for the reasons that George says. I think the air quality issue is one of a basket of green issues, which I know will be pretty much top of the agenda in the council when we get back to work. And I think there are issues like the areas where my view is lorries could be banned. There are different ways to get to those areas. There are lorries coming through very unsuitable areas. I mean, trying to drive through West Clarendon when there is a car transporter coming the other way, they're always empty. I don't know why, but they're always empty. And I have to go up onto the pavement, and it's fantastic when you're in the area where there's no pavement. They are high polluters. And we've got to do something about that. I mean, of course, George is right about the perhaps electric cars, probably hydrogen cars more than that. But as I say, the green agenda is going to be a big issue for the council.
But Bob, we've heard all this before, to be fair, and little seems to get done. Why is that?
Really?
If I may, I think the real question is: will the county council actually be publishing its climate change agenda and its plans to implement it?
Sorry, Bob, you said really as if we haven't heard it all before, but I think we've heard it before. I'm sure I've heard the same statements that we need to improve these things, but it doesn't.
Well, you know, if any of the other parties had spent £20 million converting nearly 90,000 streetlights into LED, they'd be singing about it. You know, there's a whole number of the electric buses and things like that. I think that is good. It's good steps forward. It's always going to be a lot of steps forward. But I don't think we should be competing by saying, well, we could do 1% more of this or a bit more of that. I think we need to look at this. There needs to be unity inside the council that we are determined to be a carbon zero council and county.
Thanks, Bob. Now, Fiona, forgive me, but I want to zero in on one particular aspect of this with you, and that is for cyclists. And I admit my interest straight away because I am a cyclist in Guildford. Some of the areas are fine, others are terrible, and the routes coming in from the Godalming Road, which I use, it can be quite dicey for cyclists, to be honest, and there is no real safe cycling route. This is my plea to you. Could you look for a Dutch or Belgian cycle route planner and bring them to Surrey so that they can start having the same approach here that they have in those countries?
Well, do you know, this is an interesting subject. Our submission to the local plan development management strategies queried the cycle pathways in Guildford because they're simply not joined up. And we were told by the Borough Council that actually it was absolutely that the county is working on its cycling strategy and that nothing could be done locally until Surrey County Council had opined on what was going to happen about cycling. And one of the things we were concerned about actually was that, you know, you'd have a cycling lane and then suddenly it would disappear. Well, what happens to the cyclist?
Yeah, exactly.
When that happens? So actually, we are told by Guildford Borough Council Planning Department that until Surrey County Council come out with their cycling strategy, and by the way, there's no date for that cycling strategy to be delivered yet, so you can guarantee it's at least a few years away, nothing positive is going to happen in Guildford.
If
Okay,
I may interject very briefly, sorry, I think it's not just the cycling strategy. The sustainable movement corridor is a phrase which gets bandied about a lot, and if you ask about it, you're told, oh, the detail exists on the county website. But when you actually look at all the documents, despite the fact that the local plan says the eastern half of it should go through Burtham and Merrow and up onto Gosden Hill and all the rest of it, we have a look on the county council. All it basically says is it's a plan to deliver safer cycling and walking routes from the hospital and university to the town centre. That is as far as detailed planning has got.
Okay,
and this is talked about 5-6 years ago.
Okay, we know everybody, we've got 2 more subjects I'd like to cover, and we've got 8 minutes left. So please bear that in mind and keep your answers concise. The local plan. Now, the local plan is not a responsibility of the county council, but I am pretty sure it's affected some of the results in this election. Do you agree? And if so, should it have done? Bob?
Well, I mean, people are entitled to decide how they're going to vote on whatever is affecting them. And there's no question that in the send part of my division, it is the major issue. Lifetime Conservatives not voting for us. We had a very big swing towards us in the local by-election there, which indicates where that is going. But it has hit it badly, and it certainly affected us hugely in the borough council elections before, but that's just democracy.
Now, your party colleague Julie Isles said before the election that there was some tacit agreement she knew of that if the local plan was reviewed, the housing number wouldn't go up. Do you know the details of that?
Well, that's what I believe to be the case. That was the letter we jointly, as Conservative candidates, put in.
Where's the evidence for that?
Well, because the indices have come down. That's the point. So therefore, I mean, we have to be cautious about this because the indices do come down. I think it is surprising that there's been so little action to try and challenge some aspects of the local plan, because some of it, in our opinion, could get changed.
Okay, but you can understand then that those at Guildford Borough Council are a bit reluctant to just put their trust in, all the indices are coming down, and then stick the review in and find that the numbers have gone up. They want a bit more assurance on that, don't they?
Well, there's no evidence they've looked at it.
If I could just say that Guildford Borough Council has actually written to the Office of National Statistics to query the way in which student graduate numbers were actually included in the standard calculation. So we have actually taken action on that point, along with a number of other local authorities like Coventry. I think the local plan did play a large part. I think a lot of people felt very let down and have not recovered and will not recover from being let down by the previous Conservative administration.
And did it play in Guildford South East, Fiona?
In Guildford South East, it wasn't a big issue.
No, okay.
Well,
and for you, George? Sorry, Fiona. For you, George, was it an issue?
Not a particularly big one in itself, but what I say is I think there's 2 parts to the local plan. There's the part which people think about, and then there's the part which the county council can actually do something about. The bit which is in people's mind is fundamentally an issue of trust. Many people placed their trust in the Conservative promises in 2015 on the local plan, and felt betrayed, and that the Conservatives have still failed to regain that trust. And the decision for Conservative candidates like Councillor Isles to run against their record, a campaign against their record, I think only reminded people of why they had voted against the Conservatives last time round. The practical bit where the county council can play a part, which is why I'm disappointed that the Conservatives in all of their campaign promises didn't make any mention of this, given that they're the ones who still run the county council. The county council is responsible for transport. Transport infrastructure is a key part of all of the allocated development sites, particularly the strategic sites. And if the county council keeps on phoning it in their responses, then we will end up with bad development. if the county council robustly challenges developers on transport requirements, on making sure the correct infrastructure is put in place, then we could be in a completely different scenario. You know, it could be, it really is chalk and cheese depending on how county highways and county council approach infrastructure and transport.
Okay.
That is a big question. And that is the
would-
aspect which not many people brought up on the doorstep or many people understand.
Okay.
But that is the key dimension
Thank you,
to it.
George. Thank you. Fiona, you just want a quick word?
Yes, I was going to say earlier that, you know, we talk about climate change. The issue is if we have large developments in completely sustainable areas, as the Conservatives promoted in the local plan 2019, in Wisley, in Gosden Hill, in Garlick's Arch, well, let's just extend Garlick's Arch, but Wisley and Gosden Hill, these are unsustainable sites. People will only be able to move around if they have a car.
Okay.
So, you know, there's a complete dichotomy.
Do you agree that Wisley's an unsustainable site?
Absolutely.
No, Bob, I'm asking. Bob?
It's not in my patch. I haven't looked at it to that degree, but I think something needs to be done.
You've got a view though, haven't you?
Well, you say it's unsustainable. It depends on the transport links, doesn't it? And I think it's too early to say what those would be. But it's something my party in the Mole Valley constituency, but the Guildford part opposes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and it's very, I think it can be confusing to people to know where the Conservative Party stands on this. But anyway, we'll have to leave that there, I'm afraid, for the moment. And there's one last quick subject I'd like to talk about. I have raised it before, so you may not be surprised. I'm going to talk about the Nolan principles, the principles by which everyone in public life should abide, and in particular, the one about accountability. And I raise this because over since the Guildford Dragon's been going the last decade, I have on occasion found politicians quite reluctant to answer questions or turn up for interviews. So can I get from each of you at least agreement that you will respond to the Guildford Dragon and our questions and our requests for interviews in your term of office? And we'll start with you, Fiona.
To the best of my knowledge, we have always turned up and always agreed to be interviewed. And I certainly will absolutely abide by that going forward.
Okay, Bob?
I have to be careful how I answer this, but I will be as open to you, Martin, and available for interviews as I have been for the last 8 years.
Okay, thank you. And George?
Yes, we have always been happy to respond to any press inquiries, even when they come with very tight deadlines at inconvenient times. But I also think it's also incumbent on journalists, and I accept the Dragon is better at this than most, on journalists to ask the right questions and to pay attention to the right subjects and not get distracted by tunnel vision, which is quite often what happens with reporting on local democracy.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, fortunately, I know that you three are not culprits in this area, but I hope that you can spread the message to your party colleagues, because I don't just think it should be a choice. You know, the public has voted you in. They are entitled to hear what you've got to say, and we are the medium through which that normally takes place. Anyway, thank you all very much for taking part in this debate, and good luck to you all when you serve as councillors over the next 4 years.
Thank you, Martin.
Very much.
Great.